You might have noticed in the recent talks, and in fact in everything I do, I try to convince you of one thing and then the opposite, right? And that means some of you are very confused. That's okay. That's quite normal. Okay, there are two reasons for that. One, I'm quite used to talking to different levels of students, so I'll try to do something really quite clear in the first half of the talk, and then the second half is for advanced students who are bored and falling asleep. Okay? So if you get confused at the end, that's all right. That's part of the plan. And the other is that I do believe in dialectic thought. I do believe that our thought processes do not operate in binary oppositions, that is right and wrong. I think for every argument we put forward, there are counter-arguments. We interact with them and produce new arguments, as in Hegelian philosophy and in Marxism, as I'm sure you're aware. We have dialectical materialism. I hope to be materialist. I hope to be dialectical occasionally. Okay? So, not surprisingly, yesterday I convinced you, I hope, that there is no such thing as equivalence. Right? And this would be the indeterminist paradigm. And this was following through from this book on translation theories. When we've met what equivalence is, we saw that Skopos had one response to it, descriptive translation studies had another, the indeterminist paradigm had another response to that, just saying there is no substantial basis for equivalence. And today we're looking at another paradigm which argues, I will suggest, that we can create equivalence. If it doesn't exist, that's okay. We will create it. How will we create it? Remember I said that translation decisions are of a form where there's no rule. You can be right but, or wrong but there's no rule for deciding it's right or wrong. Localization contradicts my theory. It says we're going to write rules. And if you obey the rules, there will be equivalence. Problem solved. Well, problem solved. Okay, let's see what we mean by localization. Who has never heard of localization? You have no idea what it means. You're lying. Who does know what it means? Some of you are not saying. Who has a vague idea? Okay. Doesn't matter. I'll show you what I think it means. It may have other meanings. But I'm going back to dialectical materialism. Do you know this sentence, this phrase? All that is solid melts into air. It's a quintessential phrase from the loss of full meaning in the world, from the experience of modernity, I think, and even more so of post-modernity. When I gave you the list of thinkers whom I appreciate, from Gilles Deleuze to Michel Serres to Bruno Latour and Michel Caillon, those people whom I like very much, and Jacques Derrida, of course, they would be very much in tune with this particular phrase. Does anybody know where it's from? Apart from... No! Oh dear. You'll guess very soon. All that is solid melts into air. In Lukács's terms, God retreated from the world. We were left with a meaningless world. Okay? All that is holy is profane. It's rather beautiful, I find. The need of a constantly expanding market for its products chases the bourgeoisie over the entire surface of the globe. It must nestle everywhere, settle everywhere, establish connections everywhere. the loss of meaningfulness is attached with this process we now call globalization. Okay? Economic globalization by the merchant class. Fair enough? Where is it from? Anybody? No, still not. I thought the bourgeoisie would give you a clue. Through its exploitation of the world market, given a cosmopolitan character to production and consumption in every country. Cosmopolitan simply means international. Okay? Production and consumption has become international in every country thanks to globalization. And this produces an experience of meaninglessness. Now, where is it from? Who? Marx? Karl Marx? Yeah, that's the one. Not Groucho Marx. Karl Marx. Any text?
Capital.
We don't read big texts. Yeah, you can find the ideas certainly in Capital, but it's pretty essential. Communist Manifesto, Chapter 1, page 2. I mean, you don't have to get very fast into the Communist Manifesto. 1848 though. Okay, 1848, he's talking about the kind of experience we find in deconstruction and in globalization. In the processes that we think are new to us now, in the middle of the 19th century, we had an awareness of the same kinds of processes. And one of the interesting arguments behind this is that Marx and Engels were close enough to the pre-industrial age to remember when production and consumption were local. When you would eat the cuisine of the particular area because of the seasons that were in that area. And in season you would have the fruits of the season. And at the right time of year you would have the meat that's ready at that time of year. And the cycles of the seasons met with the cycles of your life. If you've done literary theory, you might know of Northrop Frye, who described natural cycles as being the foundation of literary creation and of the literary imagination. This fullness of experience because you are part of nature. As soon as trade removes consumption from production, separates the place of production and consumption, brings in the whole processes of distribution, no longer can we presume to have a natural relation with the environment. You also bring in lots of ecological problems at the same time, which you might be aware of in Beijing, except on days when it rains and cleans the air. Okay? So the experience that we met in indeterminacy is somehow related to economic processes, as Marxism would predict. Base superstructure. Now for localization. Meaninglessness, ladies and gentlemen. Meaninglessness is in my computer. Now, over the years, I've had many meaningless texts in my computer. One of the problems is I don't pay for software. I think it's somehow unethical to do so. So you might have the same experience. Being Chinese, you can download pirated versions of everything, I hope. So here's something that appeared on a CD player of mine many years ago when we had CDs, before DVDs. That's how old my computer is. Error has been occurred. What language is that? Sorry? What? Who said? What language?
Why is it passive tense? Like error.
It's trying to be English, we think. Okay? Can we correct it to make it correct English?
Error has occurred.
Error has occurred. Yes, or error, or yeah, something bad happened. To help me here, over the years I've used this example many times, and usually when there's a defect of English, you can tell the other language that's behind it. I haven't been able to with this one. The best bet is it's Hebrew. That somebody in Israel developed the software, and they do a lot of software in Israel, and that this is a calc from Hebrew coming through my English. Now, what's interesting is that when this error occurs, you can look at it, and what you have to do is what? You only have one option. Aceptar. Why is my computer bilingual, or sort of bilingual? It speaks defective English and Spanish in the same information object. Why is it bilingual? Any idea? Why do we get bilingual text on computers? It's all over. I imagine you have the same thing. I don't know if you're aware of it. This is from the same years. This is a printer. Okay, it's okay. I've got paper, general, basics, configure, detalles, administración de color, sharing, finding. What's that one? Effects. Comentario, despacho, separador de página, ninguno, examinar. Why? What's happening with my computer? It can't make up its mind. Okay. It's like people are not aware of translation until they get translation mistakes, right? And then people are aware, oh, there's a translator there because that's wrong. The same thing with localization. People are not aware of it until it messes up. And then you're aware of it. Now, why should that menu be bilingual? Does anybody know? Can you guess?
The ones in Spanish might be useful for you. The ones in English might not affect your use.
I wish my computer was so intelligent. Okay. I really wish it were. Or it's simply this one, the previous. Oh God, no, I don't want to go there yet. The first one, the error has been occurred, and aceptar. Why is it aceptar?
Because the system language is Spanish.
Right. So in this interface, we don't have a word there. We have a word that says, go to the operating system and pick up the word it has for accept. Okay? So somewhere there's not a word, there's a rule. That's what I've tried to get at. Okay? And the same thing here, that for some of these items, the rule says pick up this corresponding word from the operating system, and if there's not one there, use English. Okay? So what we've got there is actually partial localization. Part of it has been localized, part of it hasn't. A lot of the computers and softwares in the world work like this. Okay? You might get the interface Spanish translated, but not the help file, which is crazy because the help file is the one you need. But still, actually, we did some research. I paused for a minute. We did research on this about who needs help with software. This was a Korean researcher, and she wanted people, I think, to put in a password to get into an Apple account. She worked for Apple. And so she tried it on her gardener and her mother, okay, and other people like that. And she found that if they made a simple mistake and they asked for help, they got a very good text in Korean. But if they didn't understand that and they had to ask for more help, they got a bad translation. And if they needed even more help, no translation. Because the translation policy was, do high-class translations for the most frequently used websites. Makes sense, yeah? high use, high quality, yeah, revise it, great translation. So the poor people who failed to solve the problem the first time, the second time, or the third time, you're on your own. Yeah? Bad translations or no translation because you are not young enough to use computers, usually. Okay? So this kind of logic is kicking in here in the use of translation. Now, this is my favorite example of all time of localization. Okay? It's from Microsoft, it's a clock and a date. It's, what language is it? Propiedades de fecha y hora, that means date and time properties. Sorry, I'll go over here to follow it. Date and time, your time zone, your internet
Time.
clock, time, whatever, yeah. The date, it's March. Now this is interesting. That's all Spanish up there. This is Catalan, another language, yeah. My computer speaks 3 languages. So this is back to Spanish, and this is all Spanish, okay? And the actual calendar is in Catalan, all right? Now, what day of the week is it, please? What day of the week is it? It's the 30th of March. I've been using this example for a very long time. You can see 2003, yeah? Now what day of the week is it? Saturday. How do you know? Sometimes it begins on Monday, and sometimes on Sunday. In China, when do you begin? Sunday. Okay, but other cultures, Monday. It can begin on Monday. That's when you go to work. Okay. Do I know what day of the week it is? No. Why not? Because this here is not a translation. It's a rule-generated text. And what's the rule? It says, in the culture of the not the operating system, but the preferred language, which is Catalan here, in the culture of the preferred language, go to the names of the days of the week and select the first letter. So M, T, W, T, F, S, S, fine. For English it works, okay? For Catalan, it's dilluns, dimarts, dimecres, dijous, divendres, dissabte, diumenge. Every day is a D day. And the rule doesn't work. That's how you know something different is happening. That the text has not been produced by a translator, it has been produced by a rule. And if you produce text by rules, you avoid indeterminacy. You also mean that the days of the week melt into air. That meaningless tends to result, but you're trying to overcome the very profound translation problem that we met yesterday. Okay? So can you see that translation, the localization might be different from translation, or certainly different from classical equivalence. Rule-generated text production. Okay? The standard definition. This is from the Localization Industry Standards Association, LISA, which went bankrupt many years ago, but still it's cited as a definition. Take a product and tailor it to an individual local market, and that market is called a locale. And I'll show you what a locale means in a minute. Notice it doesn't refer to translation. It refers to a product and to a process of marketing a product. Okay? Translation is part of that process. Localization is not a synonym for translation. Translation is usually part of localization. within localization, translation refers to this, converting user-visible natural language strings from one language to another. A string is just a set of symbols, characters or letters. Natural language means it's Chinese, German, French, English, natural language like that. User visible means it's not code inside the software or the hardware, anywhere there. It's on the screen and the user can see it. Translation is what it always was, a conversion process. Okay, so you have localization as a product done with, as an activity done with products, and translation as part of it. So, localization equals translation plus factor X. What is factor X? In a localization project, it might be a major website that has to go into many, many locales, or it might be instruction manual for a car, again to go into many, many languages in this case. In a project like that, translation accounts for at best 1/3 of the cost. Project management, another third, just coordinating all the activities, and then the remaining third is factor X. So what's factor X? Any guesses? Let's have a look. What's factor X? Something called internationalization is the first one. Then a process of adaptation. This means applying those rules that I just talked about. Not adaptation in the sense of adapting a novel to a film or adapting literary text, etc. It's quite specific adaptation of time zones or currencies or how to present the date. Okay? Product re-engineering. If you're working on a computer, in English, I use hotkeys. Do you use hotkeys? You don't even touch computers. You're on your phone, aren't you? Anyway. When we used to have computers, I would go Control O for open. But if my computer is working in Spanish, I go Control A for abrir. So A, that meant something in English, now it means something else. And so all the hotkeys, all those keys have to be reassigned for the new language. And it gets quite complicated, so that software that's not for the general public often doesn't do it because it's too difficult. You keep doing Control O for all the other languages. Because that's a very complicated process for these huge websites or instruction manuals, it all has to be tested to see that it works. We have to get people to actually use the software to see that it's all in the right place, for the hotkeys, for example. And all of that requires product engineers, desktop publishers, the people who do the interface and how it looks. You need IT experts, you need translators and terminologists and project managers to coordinate. The big money in a localization project goes to that person there. That person there usually retires by the age of 42. Entirely stressed out, but pretty rich. They don't use computers, they use phones, but you use phones anyway. They're making sure the project is on time. That's their main concern. Are they worried about language quality? Sometimes yes, but often no. In the United States, the project manager is usually an MBA, somebody who has a master's in business administration, and they work on business model. In Europe, we have quite a few who have a training in translation. which is very different. They do care about language quality. In the United States, they care about being on time. Quantity and timeliness are more important than quality. I generalize, okay? It's not always the case. The head of localization at Google, for example, is a graduate of the Monterey Institute for Translation Studies, of International Studies. Okay, so she is a translation graduate and does her job really well. Any questions about that before we go on? So you can see, I mean, my concern is how do we interact with machine translation? And I'm suggesting, well, we could do other stuff. Wait a minute. We have been doing other stuff in localization for about 25 years. Since this paradigm developed in the 1980s, became online in the 1990s. 25 years, 30 years. Yeah? Okay. So the question, if the machine's working so well, what are we going to do as translators? Hey, lots of work, lots of jobs there. If you like that sort of work. For localization. Here I simplify, but here we go. Don't think like this. Start text over there, target text over there, add an arrow or a bidirectional arrow if you love equivalence. Okay? That's sort of the way we think about translation or equivalence in translation. Okay? Localization says you've got your start text there, for example, website developed in the United States for Americans. Yep. And you're going to go over to many languages over there, TT1, TT2, TT3. And to do that, you're going to take out the American stuff of this and produce what's called an internationalized version. The first step of a localization project is called internationalization. And it means, in theory, taking the culture out of a text. Can you do that? Is it possible to take a culture out of a text? I think what it does, it takes the human culture out of a text and puts a technical culture in place. Okay? It takes out the language, it puts in the rules. And the whole secret of localization is in this process of internationalization. So I'll give you some examples of how it works. Oh, sorry. Before you... And then the ST disappears. Don't believe me? Do you work on Microsoft Word? What version is it? Can you check? Just do a check for about this product. What version is it? Does it even say anymore?
365.
365, very good. 365 days a year. Now, that has been developed from version 364, which was developed from version 36 something, right? Okay. Now, has anybody ever seen Word 1? 1? I think I did. I had a Mac in 1983. It had no hard disk. We had to put in everything in the floppy disks and stuff. And I think it was Word 1.2. But my point is, the original text disappears. So that what we're working on are a series of updates to the original. The original's gone. Nobody cares about it. And what we're translating from one to the other are a series of modifications to the version we have available now. So all the work comes from the internationalized version, which is the one that has the updates. Like a website. Has anybody seen the original Coca-Cola website? Doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. There is no source anymore. We're constantly working on the decultured internationalized version. Some examples of internationalization to make this concrete for you. In 1963, if you were writing on a computer, and a few did exist in 1963, you could produce 128 characters because they were using a 7-digit code system. So I remember in 1983, with that computer, I could write in French, okay? I could do the accents, but I couldn't do the French inverted commas, which are like that, all right? It didn't have enough space in it to do all the characters. It did some of them. So I would have been using the 256 character ASCII system, which was in the early computers in the 80s when I came on board. In 1991, oh, I didn't do the research. Okay, you can fill that in. I checked it. For 2019, we use Unicode 12.1 and we can produce 137,993 characters. Okay? So originally, everybody complained that they couldn't write their language in computers when we were using ASCII. Okay? Now, all the languages you want. That's the 128 that we had at the beginning, and that's the space of coded characters that is available. In fact, we are only using a small percentage of the spaces available for new characters. So we can now write all the languages in the world for the foreseeable future. How is that possible? Why is that internationalization? Well, the original computers were written for English. We say, well, we've got to do French and German and accents and things, so we'll make it a bit bigger. Oh, and there's more languages. Well, we'll make it a bit bigger. What they're making bigger is the number of bits, the number of 01s that are used to encode the character. Okay? So you move from 8-digit to 16-digit and you get a big jump. You get more than double. What this means is that you develop a system which can handle all the specific systems. So the internationalized version grows bigger so it can handle all the local language scripts in this case. It can do that because computer capacity has grown so much, the processing capacity. Now it doesn't matter how many bits we need to encode a character, because remember the singularity that we talked about before? For processing capacity, it has far surpassed the human brain. And that's why we can have internationalization of our scripts. You could write Chinese quite happily, Korean, Japanese, on the same computers that we use for English, French, and German. Problem solved. It's a case of internationalization. More practically, internationalization means instead of writing words in a language, you write placeholders. So as I said, day of the week in language of preference, take first letter. It's a rule, and we go down and get the language that we're dealing with. A set of items to fill those placeholders is called a locale. So a locale is not, this vague thing like the language and culture or the context or anything like that. It is really like, this is a locale. What is it of? It's the locale for German language in Germany, because you can have German language in Switzerland, German language in Austria, and that's going to be different. This is the way you present the time and the date in this locale. This is the way dates are presented in this locale. This is the way numbers are presented. This is the way decimal points and negatives are presented. Okay? And you just get, and there's additional settings there for more. The locale is an encoding of the bits that the computer has to pick up to put in the text that's in the interface. So it's a very specific concept. Localization means adapting to a locale. That's a locale. For marketing people, a locale can also include information like man, woman, buyer, or income level. Okay, you can adjust it to those sorts of things, but the logic is pretty much the same. Okay, that you are producing texts that have rules, able to pick up information from standardized representations of place. Okay, that's your locale. You look worried. You're not worried. You're bored. I move on there. Any questions? No. Okay. So, internationalization, the logic of it can also include placeholders for prices. And we know, for example, that currency exchanges go up and down. The value of RMB and American dollars goes up and down. So on our website, are we going to check every day what RMB is worth? No. We put in a placeholder and that connects automatically with an online website that gives the daily or hourly exchange rates, and that's the number that appears in your website. So the text you see looks like a continuous text, but it's actually picking up bits of information from all over the place. The internationalized version is just that set of placeholders for information that can be picked up. Same thing for information chunks. What's a chunk? It's just a bit of text and or image that fulfills a function. Okay, it's very, very non-standard definition. It's not technical. Yeah. I'll give you an example in a minute. This is not good. Okay. I'll give you an example of a chunk in a minute. What happened to chunks? Did I do the dragon naturally speaking text with you? Yeah? That was a chunk. Okay? Because I met it 3 times, and one time it's longer, one time it's shorter. It could be adjusted to length or truncated as was suitable. So that little text, it would be the product welcome text. Okay? And if you needed more, you can add more. If you don't need more, you take it away. And this content would be recycled. All right? Now, internationalization can be extended to writing texts so that they go through machine translation very easily. Okay, if you're going to take the culture out of the text, let's produce a really banal, clear text. One example is Caterpillar. I mentioned it before, I think. Caterpillar English. Caterpillar makes that sort of machinery. It has about 70,000 terms. They make lots of machinery. There's lots of bits and pieces. But each term is really specific. So the term is actually a number. And that number corresponds to one word in every language they sell the machines in. So very controlled. No indeterminacy at all. If you're operating that machine, you don't want indeterminacy. You want it, you press that button, it's got to happen, right? And very restricted syntax. Okay, and you write in what's called Caterpillar Technical English. When you do that, and according to Celsius, when you do that, the text goes from basic Caterpillar English through machine translation into any number of languages because they have in-house machine translation systems, and there's only minimal post-editing required. Okay, if you control the source, you are really producing rule-based equivalence. It's not that, doesn't pretend to be natural language, technical language. I want to show you the rules for basic English. There are many versions. I think the first was by Ogden in the 1930s, so it's been around for a long time. But these are sort of a condensation of the basic rules that we would use if you're training somebody to write technical English. It might work for Chinese. First, don't write long sentences. Don't use subordination. No clever grammar, please. Don't use the passive. Passives can be attributed wrongly. Avoid pronouns and proforms, that is, indicators of place and time that are not specific. Don't be scared of repeating. In good English that we like to produce, repetition is bad, so we'll use synonyms or new phrases to make the reading experience exciting. In technical text, be boring. The machine has to work. Yep. And don't write incomplete sentences. I'll give you examples, okay? Just because I do this in class. I teach this to students so they can do an experiment that I've talked about. And yeah. It works for Spanish, French and German. I don't know if these rules would apply to Chinese. Perhaps I'll show them to you and I'll ask you, okay? So, if it's a long, like that sentence has 25 words. Authors will approach any writing project by collecting the necessary information first, and after carefully analysing and evaluating it, they will create a structured draft. When will machine translation make a mistake? Any guesses? I don't know. Neural is getting so clever, I'm beginning to have doubts. But usually, that it, they can't take that it and associate it with writing project. It's too far. Okay? There's too much subordination. It's a dangerous thing for machine translation. How can we improve that text? How can we make it basic? Any idea?
The writing project.
Sorry? Yeah?
Evaluating the writing project. Replace.
Yeah, get rid of the proform, get rid of it, repeat writing project. It's still quite difficult because, you know, they has to go back to authors right back here. Really hard. So, authors. Yeah? Any other suggestions? Would you find this in a technical text, a technical manual? Why not? What would you find? Yeah.
So
So-
we can
Yeah.
first write collecting the necessary information. Second, carefully and analyzing and evaluating the writing project.
Yes.
Third, creating a structured draft. Please.
Excellent. Go to the top of the class. Well done. Okay, you might find something like this. Okay, the author performs the following tasks, and then we have the infinitive introducing the tasks. There's very little risk of misattribution. All right, we got rid of the proforms, the pronouns in this case, so that's fine. But this is going to go through the machine translation much more easily than that. Okay. It's not difficult to write like that, after all, if you have that mentality. Okay. Did I show you? I did show you, didn't I? I didn't. I did. Oh. Favorite example again. This is from the actual Spanish passport. Okay. It's the page that tells the person what to do if you lose your Spanish passport. And do you want me to read that? How many sentences are in that? Where's my Spanish man? He's hiding back there. How convenient. You guys, you know that English sentences are longer than Chinese sentences usually, right? So you complain about bad English sentences, right? Yeah. Look what Spanish does. Okay? He did that. That's his fault. That's all one. And look at the translation into English. How many sentences? 3. That's a really brave translator. I want to commend this. Love. He left out the full stop at the end, which is not good. But he was brave enough to take one Spanish sentence and make it 3 sentences in English. It's still going to be difficult for the machine translation because of the nature of the sentence, but it's going to be much easier much easier than that one, which uses too much subordination and it's not going to get through machine translation. Subordination is just an example like this, the which, okay? When students write essays, which should be handed in, the machine has to know that the which goes to the essays and not to the students. It usually can, but not everybody writes clearly. It's much easier to make it into 2 sentences like that, okay? Students write essays which should be handed in at the stipulated time by the authorities. They must. So the subordinator is at the front, the when. It's much better to divide it into 2 sentences and not use subordination. Machine happy, okay. Got that? Yep. Good. Active, simple enough. A summary of questions will be sent to the responsible students. This is normal bureaucratic prose in English. It's much better to say, what did I say? The project manager will send a summary. The active is likely to be clearer to people and to the machine. All PowerPoints are on my website. Don't have to take photos. You must check the spelling of your text before publishing it. That's fine, but it's better to say you must check the spelling before publishing your text. Clearer. Then. Come and see me then. No. Come and see me at noon. Mention the time. If you can, okay? Avoid all proforms. Oh, sorry. So here's what I do with my students. I like my students to be involved, okay, in the activities. So it's like in primary school, they have to write a text about the most wonderful moment in their life, okay, of about 200 words, and bring that to class. And it's not allowed to be obscene. Okay, so I've had some pretty exciting, wonderful moments over the years, but it has to be normal, wonderful. That's ST1. This is the start text that we're starting from. Now, what they're going to do, and everybody likes to be a writer, so they're quite literary or poetic texts when we start with them, okay? Then they have to apply the pre-editing rules to that text. So they would write it in Chinese, and they would apply the rules to Chinese. Would the rules work with Chinese? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, sentence length, probably, but you have a very paratactic language anyway. A lot of the rules are based on being explicit. So we'd probably be asking you to write English-sounding Chinese. Anyway, think about that. If you're working in English, though, it's dead easy to apply the rules, and we get a pre-edited text. They have to record how long pre-editing takes. Why do we want to know how long pre-editing takes? Because we're going to put the original text and the pre-edited text through machine translation. Right? So they both go through. We hope that the pre-edited text will come out better than the non-pre-edited text. Yeah? And then both those texts are post-edited. They're corrected. We hope that the pre-edited text will require less post-editing than the non-pre-edited text. Are you with me? Good. They're not up there. And I'm sorry you can't see anything. Okay. What do you think happens? Okay. Do you think that's true? That the pre-edited text requires less post-editing than the non-pre-edited text? Who says, yes, this is what happens? Who says, no, this doesn't happen? Who has no idea? Okay. Okay. Then the students have to calculate if pre-editing is worthwhile. That is, they just do the sums. Okay, it looks algebraic, but it's common sense. Usually, we find that if pre-editing takes 5 minutes, the text it produces might take 3 minutes to post-edit. And if there's no pre-editing, the text might take 4 minutes to post-edit. Right? So, on the pre-editing side, we have 5 plus 3 equals 8. And on the non-pre-editing, we have 4. So what's better, post-editing or pre-editing? Post-editing, right? So why do we bother about all this stuff about pre-editing? If pre-editing takes 8 and post-editing takes 4, there is nothing to be gained. And that's what my students find. Why is pre-editing interesting nevertheless?
5 or 10 language.
They can't see that. Yeah. If the post-editing time is shorter, okay, let's say it's 3 and 4. So we gain 1 minute. We gain 25% of post-editing time. If you're going into 4 languages, then they're the same. But if you're going into 8 languages, you're gaining double of pre-editing. And if you're going into 20 languages, you're gaining a whole lot more in pre-editing. So pre-editing is a valid solution. It's an internationalization solution when the project goes into many languages automatically, which is what they do. So how you use pre-editing or post-editing depends on how many languages the product is going into. Simple mathematics. We do it in class, we investigate. Usually we find above 3 or 4 languages, then pre-editing saves money. With neural machine translation, the difference is less. Yeah? The number of languages is great. That kind of activity is also useful. Another activity we use is to get a text and get it translated by different machine translation systems to compare the errors and to get the students to draw up a typology of errors that they correct. So I'm working with 7 languages in the classroom at the moment, and so we would get, you were talking with someone there who had 100 students in the class. That's terrible to try to teach 100 students, but still. We would get, so that they upload automatically their solutions, the things that they correct. We all see it on the screen. So we can all see everybody's work at the same time, and they're telling us what kind of errors they found in machine translation. And so we can look at that. We use, it's called Padlet, but there are many, many tools like that out there. Okay. We can look at that collectively and see more or less how we agree on what kinds of errors machine translation makes. Then we discuss whether pre-editing can fix those errors. And very often it can. The cause of most of the errors is implicit information. So the more explicit, the better it goes through machine translation. That may mean writing Chinglish. Okay, so that's another kind of activity that we use with this. This means that in the age of localization, and in the kinds of companies and projects where localization is used, there is employment in controlled writing. As I might have mentioned to you, the United States has more courses in controlled writing, in technical writing, than in translation. They train very few translators. They train a lot more people in technical writing. Why is that? because they produce the technology that we in Europe receive. So we train lots of translators and not many technical writers. Okay? China is becoming a major producer of technology. So there's going to be a demand, or there is a demand for technical writers. The terminology problems are huge, because for this work, for rule-governed text production to work, we need very clear terms in a lot of languages, and they're not allowed to overlap. So the work on terminology is enormous. Microsoft did most of its European operations in Ireland in the 1990s and into the 2000s. And Ireland was peopled by terminologists from all European languages, okay, who borrow from each other and work with each other. There's, after the texts are produced, there is an element of rewriting and adaptation. After the localization process itself is produced, we recognize that not every culture likes all the technical stuff. So there is some rewriting and adaptation, addition and subtraction that's done as well. The translation memories are used all over the place. Machine translation is integrated as part of what the translator will receive is a text plus a glossary plus a translation memory and instructions to use a particular machine translation database. Okay. And as I said before, work in project management. So the processes will or have created jobs in these areas. And more, okay, depending on the nature of the project. I want to go back to the philosophy of it. I just want to show you that it's not bad for work. It's just different kind of work. If you love language, you love the human parts of language, localization is not for you. But if you like technology, technical stuff and machines that work, and this beautiful website that fits together automatically, if you get off on that, paradise. Okay. It's said that globalization, the globalization of economies, is bringing us to the loss of linguistic diversity, the loss of languages, to the imposition of English or the imposition of Chinese on the world. Okay. I don't think that's true. I think the philosophy of localization is to adapt as much as possible to specific locales. And if you talk with people in the industry, they love it. They love going into all the varieties of Spanish. Go into any Microsoft program, look up the list of languages, and you'll find Spanish, you'll find 23 varieties of Spanish, and I think there are 16 varieties of English in there. They love it. They're good at that. It's a challenge for them. I was at a conference in Nepal for localization in South Asia, that is Nepal, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka. And we're talking about the problem of many local languages not having a script. There are many languages that are spoken and are endangered, radically endangered, because they're not written. Oh, and the tech guys went, wonderful, we can solve that problem. How? Oh, speech recognition. They'll speak to the computer, and the computer will do what they say. Yeah, it's a challenge for them. They are not against language diversity. They're very much in favor, because they know, the big global company knows, that the more it localizes, the more product it sells. The closer it gets to the consumer, the more the consumer will buy the product. So I would challenge this presupposition of language loss being due to technology. At the same time, the technologies we distribute are the same. We're all working Microsoft. All of us. What? All of us. And we think We're different. So there's this radical imposition of technological sameness, which is the true equivalence. And it's that which enables the rules to work. It also means, and this is where it gets worrying for me, because major multinationals actually like to localize, like to sell their products at endpoints that are very different, they position the consumer in the position of a consumer. It is very difficult linguistically for that consumer at the southern tip of Sri Lanka to get enough English through their program to become a producer in Silicon Valley in the United States. Not impossible. But the fact that you give people products in their local languages suggests that they're not going to learn other languages and not going to enter the linguistic realm of production. Consumption and production are radically separated by the processes of localization, as Marx predicted. And this means that some areas of the world are radically disempowered. Whereas they might do better if there were no localization and they had to learn the language of production in order to use the machines. It's a problem for me. Now, where am I going with this? Now, I'm just showing you the diversity of Microsoft. That's Spanish that we have. What? No. Ah, good. Right. So let's look at how localization actually works. Okay. In China, you have McDonald's, right? Mm-hmm. McDonald's is the same all over the world, right? Wrong. Wrong. No, they radically localize their, not the language, it's all the golden arches. Except in Hong Kong. I'm told in Hong Kong it was banned. No? They don't have the end?
Actually the same with the Mandarin.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I thought they said it was rude or something. I was trying to imagine, but anyway. Okay, so in India it's a veggie pizza McPuff, McPanio Royale. In Japan, a veggie chicken burger, a samurai pork burger. In Thailand, okay, I don't know, the UK, a mozzarella dipper in the UK, and a bubur ayam in Malaysia. I have no idea what that is. And notice, McDonald's doesn't localize to the home locale, because in the United Kingdom, you get a mozzarella dipper. There's Italian cheese in the United Kingdom at McDonald's. So they're very clever. I mean, it's the same basic hamburger technology, but it's adapted, and the product is adapted, and the language is adapted too. So it's not all internationalization. Oh, that's what I was going to show you. How did that escape? Okay, this is the text we did. I just found it in different lengths in different places. How did that get there? All right, okay. Right. Let's look at websites, because everybody uses websites, and it's easy to see how things are operating in websites. Okay, websites are localized. For big companies, localization is the way to go. There are two extremes. One is standardization, and that is when a head office of a head company wants to control its international marketing, control everything. Apple, Steve Jobs' legacy, control freaks, absolute control. I did this last night. That's Apple in China, and that's Apple in the United States. Apple uses just translation. Just, the only thing that changes is the translation of the user visible natural language strings. That is standardization. It has its advantages because the parent company can control what goes on, and Apple does it very well. They ensure that the same product is released simultaneously all over the world, so they get the synergies of the advertising campaign. The one campaign comes out all over the world for the same product. They get people to queue up outside shops, that's the publicity as well, and it works for them. On the other hand, there is adaptation. Now this is adaptation, its meaning in localization means to change everything in the language and the presentation to suit the target culture. Coca-Cola is the same gunk all over the world, right? Actually, it's not. I went to Coca-Cola in Las Vegas, and we tried 64 different kinds of Coca-Cola from all over the world. They do make some weird stuff. So they do localize the product. But they also localize their image. So this is this morning, that's Coca-Cola in the United States. And where is it? That's one of the images of Coca-Cola in China. What is it? What is it doing, that green thing there? Did somebody help me? No?
The bottle is recycled.
What?
Connects the
Environmental friendliness.
Yeah, you're right.
Coca-Cola is environmentally friendly.
The bottle is recycled.
Okay. But you can see that the entire design of the website is different, the images are different, the background, the scrolling thing, it's made to look Chinese. Like Coca-Cola is a Chinese product and environmentally friendly. All right. I invite, if you want to have a great time, just click on the countries. You go to the international site, and they're in every country in the world, and they're all different. I don't know why. Well, I do know that they want to sell the product and they make it look local. People drink it and think, I feel really Chinese drinking Coca-Cola. Helping me as well. Okay. So in between those two extremes, most
Government.
companies, including governments in this case, mix the two. Okay? They'll mix adaptation, standardization, and they will mix in the role of translation. Okay? So this is the USA government site. I'm sorry for guys who can't see it, but you've got an attractive woman on the phone. So she's phoning the government because it works. You phone the government, you actually get an answer in the United States. It's weird. So search the government, find a job. Travel, these are travel warnings, where it's safe to go, where it's not safe to go. How to get money and credit. A loan, very good. And immigrate to the United States is over here, okay? So people are interested in it. She looks a bit Hispanic, so she could be thinking about immigrating to the States. We're not too sure, right? So that's the English language interface for the United States government. This is the Spanish language interface on the same day. The lovely lady's gone. Instead, I've got a smiling, Hispanic-looking man with something like railway tracks behind him. He's traveling. Where's he traveling to?
The United States.
Yeah. Or he's just come in. So, remember where immigration was over here? Now it's over here. Okay, immigration and becoming a citizen are up the front, and then money and credit, benefits and government assistance. Like, hey man, you're poor. You're going to need help. Okay, and then travel is over here, because the only travel he's in is getting across the border. Okay, and becoming an immigrant. The website is translated in some places, saying that is translated, that's translated, but the order of presentation is different, and the whole feel of it is different. It's oriented towards a certain user, and they've thought about it. What I really love is the following. They got USA for Kids. Okay, so this is the same site on the same day, but they know that kids in school have to do school projects about the government. So there's lots of interesting stuff and drawings and fun videos for kids to find out about the government on. Okay, so this would be complete adaptation to the kids, whereas the previous ones are using a mixture of translation and adaptation. Okay, this is a completely redesigned website, whereas the former, oh sorry, I'm going that way, come back. Whereas you can see here it's the same template that has been maintained. Okay, so this is the design of the website. Fill in the places, but we can also do, when I talk about adaptation, I mean changing the positions of the various things there. Okay. I'm now going to go through another company. If you're teaching, this is good in class to figure out, so people can see how translation fits in with marketing. Okay. Now, IKEA, I don't know. IKEA, thank you. There's a huge IKEA in Beijing. Okay. This is the website. It's the same day, I think it's a few months ago. Yeah, it was in September last year, all right? I did this. This is Chinese, right? This is for you. So what do you go to IKEA for? To buy furniture. And you're good because you love eating, so it's really Chinese. and the apartment looks sort of small. So you can identify with it, right? Yeah, I mean, there's not much room back there. And you might have some kids, perhaps, not too... So you're not rich, but you're not poor. You're a young family. You can't buy expensive furniture. You go to... Is IKEA cheap or expensive here? Good. So that's why. Small apartment. Okay. Let's start. Any comments? What does this say?
More possibilities for your home.
More possibilities for your home?
Yeah.
Same place. This is the English. Okay. Same space. Same food. Family's gone. We don't know where they are. And this is translation, but it's not just translation. They formed a slogan, and somebody has created the slogan. So there's an advertising brain behind this somewhere, whereas this is a translation. Okay, there is translation, and there is a minimal adaptation. Okay, according to language. What did the Chinese say? Make room? No.
More opportunities for your
possibility.
for your family.
Yeah, because this is very hard to translate. Make room for life. It's a pun on room. Room is space, and the room you live in. So, it's rather difficult. And it suggests that by having things over there, you arrange it better and have more room. You have Marie Kondo here. You're arranging things. You don't know. It's a Japanese thing of organizing your house so you have more room to live. Marie Kondo? Yeah. So she's tidy. This is in the other place in Taipei. Recognize the sofa? It's the same sofa. Okay? But there's people. They came back into the room. It's a bit bigger, but they don't have much space because they have to put the guitars right up front. Okay. They're musical. Now, are they Chinese?
No.
No. Why are these people in the Chinese sofa in Beijing? Where are they from? Bit of a mixture. This is Nordic, you don't know. Bit of a colour problem at the back there. Okay, so it's a multiracial European family, really cool. Okay, and it's telling us, I think, that this is not a Chinese product. It's the kind of product that European cool multiracial families will use, and thereby gain some prestige, perhaps. Okay. We have the catalogue appearing here for the first time. What does this say? Does anybody?
New catalog, new products.
Sorry?
New catalog, new
Okay.
products.
So the slogan's gone. It was too hard.
No, write down there, write down there.
Smaller one.
Oh, that one? Yeah. Oh, okay. It's the same as the...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so they got the camera. Hong Kong. English, no problem. Where's the family gone? There's no sofa, no nothing.
Coffee, they go for coffee.
They can't afford the sofa even. We have 0-degree translation. Okay, they just reproduce the English. Don't worry about the image. It's basic. We've got the catalogue. Okay. Indonesia. This is the same. Okay. This is horrible. Okay. The slogan should be "Make room for life." 4 words. Yeah. In Indonesia, it's what do you want more room for in your life? It's like, you've got plenty of room. You don't need more room. What do you want more room for? Something suggests that this was not done by an advertising person, or it's a translation from Bahasa Indonesia, from Indonesian back into English. Because when you look at it in Indonesian, it's very long. So somebody's messed up. They took the English slogan, 4 words, put it into Indonesian as a long question, and translated it back into English, and it's a mess. Okay? And very minimalist again, like Hong Kong. So you can see that they've organized the world in terms of publicity campaigns. The green sofa was for a certain part of the world. The minimalist thing with the catalogue, where's the catalogue? Oh, it's in there. Yeah. Okay. Is for other parts of the world. Translation is being used alongside adaptation. It's part of the mix, but not all of the mix. This is in the UK. As I said, it's in September. This is when university students go back to university. And they're usually pretty poor, and they go and buy cheap furniture from IKEA. So this is the first time we see a price mentioned. Okay? In Asia, people might buy this product because it's sort of European and prestigious. In the UK, we don't care about Europe, Brexit at all. The price is what sells. So the price is going to appear there. And once again, we have the multiracial. It's not a family. These look like students hanging out. And the one thing we can see are jeans. Okay, we've got to know that they're young people, cool, university students. And it says Uni Essentials. Thank you very much. It's hard to read. Uni Essentials. Very short, very clear. This is what you need to go back to uni. Completely different campaign. No translation here with respect to the Asian campaigns. All right? The only thing in common is actually this, the symbol IKEA. Why is it in those colours? Anybody?
The color of the national flag of Sweden.
Good. And IKEA, actually, I do shop there. It has the names of its products in Swedish. So it sounds really foreign and cool. Wow. IKEA is actually not a Swedish company. It was founded by a Swedish man. He sold it to a multinational which is based in Amsterdam. And it is a design company which uses its profits to facilitate good design and is a cultural foundation which pays no tax. Welcome to globalization. So the Swedish flag, even that's false. Yeah? And the Swedish name, the zero translation, it's all like it. Same week, In the United States, money, 20% off. Not just a price, but we'll give you 20% off of a particular product. Nothing to do with any other campaign. The United States does its own thing. It has its own adaptation program working. And in Australia, in the same week, same thing, lower prices. One of the main values of Australian culture, believe it or not, is work. Hard work. We're a country of workers. And so we'll never stop working. We're working like you. Lower prices. Two very good values in there to sell this to Australia. Okay, so welcome to globalization. It's how they sell products. There are some very clever people at work there. The marketing people are astute and very creative, and they are working with translators in some of the website, but not in others. Okay, translation is a part of it. The catalogue, for example, is a huge translation project, which has minimal localization in it. The website and the marketing is very much localization with translation elements on the site. I think that's about it. I don't think I've got more. What we find here is that thanks to localization, some of the most global products are symbolically domesticated. We want to talk about domestication. This is domestication. All right? Adapted to make them look local when they are in fact the same all over the world. There is a fairly clear distinction between standardization and adaptation as general strategies. Sometimes you see different parts of the website use different things. Okay? And there is a very clear distinction between what is translation and what is localization. Okay, localization is bigger, it has many more things going on. And this is what worries me. I suspect that in this world, the least interesting work is in the translation, because it's highly controlled, regulated, rule-based. And that, here I'm getting to a radical suggestion, we can let neural machine translation do that job. The job that is translation. Because the more interesting work is for human labor, human creativity, in the other parts of the localization process. I'll add something else as well. Localization is a model used in software, in websites, in product documentation, but also in news services, and also in the provision of government services. So there are good things about it. Getting information to people who need it requires something like the localization process. So I'm not here to condemn capitalism and its communication techniques. One of the famous cases of localization is in India. It's called Reuters Direct. Reuters is a news company, right, that distributes news services all over the world. It is set up to give information to poor Indian farmers about the weather, long-range weather reports, and the stock market for futures. So, it gets the information, which is freely available online, does machine translation to put it into the local languages, and the farmers get it on their cell phone, because everyone in India has a cell phone too. And farmers can now make decisions about what crop to plant and when to harvest, according to long-term weather forecasts and stock market prices, future markets for their goods. It empowers them, and that has improved their productivity significantly. A little bit of translation, a little bit of machine translation, a lot of technology, and clever people can help empower the disempowered in this way. Okay? So localization is not just for the big companies. It can work for good causes as well. that's it. That's I finished. I just want to show you the activity that I would get students to do if you were my students. I would give you 50 minutes. No, I would give you about 45 minutes to do that. And they do that. They pick, for example, an international bank, a multinational bank, and then a local bank. And they look at the websites of the two. Just compare the two. What do you think they find? If we compared, I don't know, what's a multinational bank? Citibank, okay? And what's a national bank? Do you have a local Beijing bank that's only Beijing? Yes. You look at the websites, what do you think you'll find? Anybody? I'll tell you because we're short of time, okay? Usually the local websites, the local one, the national companies, will just use translation. You'll have your Chinese page, and then it will be translated into English, and probably only the parts that are of interest to international investors. Okay, very selected parts. But it will be a translation strategy. People think translation is the way to communicate with the world. Yep. The multinational company will have many more languages, and it will be designed for specific locales with different images. And it will know that it has to sell itself to the world by adapting by a mixture of strategies. Okay? Increasingly though, my students from China and Korea and Japan are finding that the national companies operate as multinationals. And we can see that the shift of production is moving from the Western world to the East Asian world, very much so. And the strategies of marketing are also moving. That what we thought was a local or national bank is in fact operating like a multinational. So that's one thing that we get out of this activity. The other is the very clear message that if you want to sell a product or get a message out on the international stage, for example, you want the world to know and admire Chinese culture, translation is not enough. Thank you for your attention.